It's a space, it's a place, it is a lab. As we always say to people, it's not one of those fancy sort of concept labs. It is going to be a physical space at Here East, in one of the Here East spaces, which is a brilliant space for innovation, as we know.
Something we've been hearing a lot about this week in Austin, and it has been a recurring theme over the last few years of being here, is the creative sector's importance in being able to tell stories. There's many new forms, particularly in the age of AI and being able to distinguish between truth and reality.
That's a good question. I mean, I think the main thing there is that technology is only successful if there is the content, if there is the story. You know, tech on its own is not going to do that.
Hello, we're recording this podcast from Austin, Texas. We're here for South by Southwest, one of the world's most influential festivals for technology, creativity and culture. For more than a decade, Here East has travelled to South by Southwest to connect to London's innovation ecosystems with the brilliance that you see here in Austin as the global creators come to this unique location once a year to celebrate all things tech and creativity. This year we're hosting the third edition of London Calling, our exclusive networking event, bringing together leaders from across the technology, academia, investment and the creative industries to explore investment opportunities on both sides of the Atlantic. And today we're speaking about one of the collaboration that perfectly represents the spirit, the Creative Experience Lab, a partnership between Loughborough University London and University College London, who we're fortunate to have both of those based at Here East with us. It's an initiative that sits right at the intersection of storytelling, immersive technology and world-class research, and it reflects exactly the kind of collaboration our campus was built to support and our vision set out way back in 2012. And today I'm delighted, as Graham, to join us. Graham Hitchen is the Director of the Policy Unit at Loughborough University London. And also we'll be speaking later at our event here in Austin, where we're discussing the launch of the Creative Experience Lab, also known as CEL. So Graham, welcome to Visionary. So let's start with the Creative Experience Lab. Now, as I've said, it's a collaboration between two universities, yourselves and UCL, sits at this intersection of creativity, culture and emerging technologies. It's everything that we wanted to do, and here is. Can you just explain what CEL is and what's inspired the collaboration and where you're taking it?
Sure. Well, at a very simple level, it's a space, it's a place, it is a lab. As we always say to people, it's not one of those fancy sort of concept labs. It is going to be a physical space at Here East, in one of the Here East spaces, which is a brilliant space for innovation, as we know. So it's going to be a physical lab, which is going to have high computing facilities. It's going to have a whole set of support for companies that want to experiment with and develop new creative experiences. So in order to make, and so we're working out the specifications at the moment. So possibly mocap studios, LED screen, as I say, computing facilities to support new visual technologies and to experiment with technologies. But the really interesting thing and what will make it a success is not so much the kit that goes in it, but actually the collaborators we bring around it. And I think what's really special about East London and the park is the number of those people that are already there, and it's sort of acting as a honeypot for others that want to come in. And so we're starting to work with those, bring them together. The V&A, you've mentioned UCL, of course. There's Sadler as well, as we're working with Studio Wayne McGregor, which is also in the same building. So we're starting to work with all of those, bring those together. And so what will make CEL, Creative Experience Lab London, what will make it a success is partly the kit inside, but it's actually primarily, I think, going to be the network that we bring together. And then what we're going to do with the space is work with those partners to build the new creative experiences for the next 5 or 10 years. So we have the pleasure on the park or adjacent to the park of having ABBA Voyage, and I always use ABBA Voyage as an example. It's been a fantastically commercially successful venture that's working really, really well, which is about recreating that experience of being at an ABBA gig in the 1980s. Mm-hmm. Well, what is the next really sort of commercially successful creative experience going to be for a museum, for a gallery, for a big public space? like Outernet at Tottenham Court Road in London, that are designing those spaces for a gig, for a big concert. What's that experience going to look like? So what we want to do is to bring those companies together to start having those discussions and actually using the space as a prototyping space.
So it's very research focused, very much looking at what the future opportunities presents from this type of technology, how it can be exploited. Clearly, we've got now on campus over 2,000 students out of the 7,000 or so who call Here East home. What opportunities do you see between the research, the partnerships and collaboration with the industry and other education institutions like UCL, you mentioned, but also the activities and opportunities presented to the student body that we've got here as well? It's fair to say the student body is not your normal student body; it's his master's, PhD level all the way through.
So it's a layered approach. I mean, what we think is going to be quite distinctive about it as for a university is that our starting point is industry. So we're working with industry partners to explore what those potential future R&D projects might be, or future projects might be, and to undertake R&D towards those. By being a university, we have the advantage of then saying to those industry partners, we can bring a PhD researcher to work alongside you to help capture some of that learning, and vice versa. We've got PhD students and master's students that are doing work on advanced computer science, on AI technologies and so on, that actually they can work and collaborate on the projects. But first and foremost, it is a research and innovation space rather than a teaching space. However, you've mentioned the students. We think that, I mean, everything I've just described is going to be providing fantastic sort of projects and examples for students to come and learn. There will be potentially, training opportunities as well. But I think so a whole range of opportunities. That's some way into the future. Once we get up and running, we're going to want to tap into the resources that sit in and around Here East to do that.
So we've known each other for a number of years now. Loughborough University has been the second tenant at Here East. BT Sport came first, but you are in our bid, over a decade of relationship as well. What do you think makes Here East be the right environment? I mean, you could have chosen to do this anywhere. What do you think has helped make Here East become the right environment for SEL? What are the benefits of that?
Okay, well, a very quick shout out to Here East, you guys. No, but I mean, it's true. Personalities are really important. As you said, we've known each other for a long time, but also, I mean, one of the things you do at Here East is create this fantastic community. We get on, we engage with each other. There's opportunities to network, so that's really important. The spaces are pretty important. Yeah. So unlike pretty much anywhere in any big city, there are quite big spaces to do stuff. Quite big open spaces, but actually quite big, very, very closed spaces as well that we can experiment in, and that's really important. And then I think next I would say the people in Here East. So I always talk about the collaborators on and around the park, but a remarkable number of those are actually in Here East itself. So I've mentioned Studio Wayne McGregor, we've mentioned UCL, we've mentioned the V&A Storehouse, haven't mentioned Ford Design, SI Games.
Games, Sports Interactive.
So they're all there actually on Here East. Then just moving out from Here East, it's like a series of onion layers around the park. A whole set of other partners: Sadler Wells, BBC, University of the Arts London, and then beyond that, University of East London, and a whole series of others. And the companies, the really interesting thing, we went to look at ABBA Voyage and see who was involved in setting up ABBA Voyage, which is, as we know, about 300 meters from Here East. And the companies that were involved were ones in Here East, so Studio Wayne McGregor that did the choreography. Then there's a company called Stewfish that's about a mile down the road towards King's Cross. There's another company, 59 Productions, that's been involved, which is again another mile. So that onion layer is that Here East is at the heart of that. It provides a fantastic sort of a place to bring those different partners together and to test new stuff.
Now, it's one of the things that when we put all the vision together and we identify the location as something absolutely essential for the future of creativity, not just in London, but in East London specifically. It was the collaborators that we had access to already around us, and then the new collaborators we could bring into that area and it could sort of benefit from that community was absolutely important for us. I think
can I just say, there's one other thing that's worth saying, which I haven't mentioned, which is the Mayor of London.
Of course.
Here East sits within the Mayoral Development Corporation, the space, London Legacy Development Corporation, which is eventually headed up by the Mayor of London. So we've got, very, I think at the moment at least, we've got a very sympathetic and supportive Mayor and mayoral team behind creative industries, behind innovation. They're really committed to that. So and that's really important politically to know that there's that sort of that environment and support in London, but in particular around the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park innovation area.
That's an important point, because also part of the Mayor of London's remit is to think about how do we get inward investment in, how do we think about bringing the businesses to come to London, how do we export what London is create and strengthen those revenue lines and make it really, really successful businesses and also leading academic institutions such as your own. So, here in South by, we've got London partners supporting us as well. That transatlantic link that we have forged in part through our own activities here and elsewhere, also London partners introducing us to Synapse, the virtual production team over in Los Angeles, who are now working again in the university space with Texas A&M. What sort of partnerships do you think are likely to come out of CEL, particularly working transatlantic as well? It's one of the reasons why we're here in the first place.
Yeah, no, it's funny actually. One of the things that one tends to do, and I do it, and I've just done it when I describe, say, Here East, you think about all the local things. One of the features of Here East is, of course, your international relationships. Here East, I think you launched at South by, so you've always seen yourself. So the great thing, I think, for being in London and being here in Here East is that although we've got a lot of we've got to walk before we can run, and we're putting those local partnerships in place, we're absolutely clear that what we're developing is something that will be of interest to international partners, but also will benefit hugely from having international partners involved. You mentioned Synapse that we're talking to. There have been other partners or companies at South by that we've been talking to and exploring different ideas. I think that particularly in the US, because of the experience of obviously the film and other entertainment industries, where there's a huge amount of talent and knowledge, but the tech companies, I mean, many of the companies we're working with are the creative companies in London. But I think bringing tech companies on board from the US in particular, I think would be really valuable.
Yeah, and we've got Synapse here with us later today, with Justin talking from the stage as well, talking about the journey that they've been on since Foundation. We've met them a number of times as well. So let's take a step back out of the education, the impact the CEL is going to have, the actual physical activities that are going to take place between yourself, the two universities, yourselves and UCL. And we're at South by. So it's a festival that's really, if you choose your sessions very well, you can look at the here and now, but also with the futurologists like Amy Webb and others looking out 5, 10, 25 years. If we specifically look at the sort of medium to long, in my world, 5 to 10 years, what do you think is the likely impact that CEL is going to have? What do you think of the outputs is going to be there? What does obviously with the universities, it's very tight and strict in the governance. I know I'm on a board of universities. What is the impact going to have? What's the investment case going to be? What is the impact and what's it going to lead to? So what do you think, 5 to 10 years, where do you see CEL?
Yeah, well, I mean, the business case that we'll make will pick off a few more sort of, let's call them, I don't know, mundane or internal objectives that we'll have, which will be about building our research capacity and creating opportunities for PhD students, attracting investment funding from public sector partners as well as private sector partners. And we want to sort of build that and build a momentum around what we're developing. But I think the real opportunity is trying to understand what is happening in creative industries and creative technologies, and in particular creative experiences. So we're going to have a particular focus on working, in the first instance at least, working with museums and galleries. Working with architects and urban designers, so people interested in public space and how people interact in public space. And the third is with performance companies. One of the things that we tend to describe it is that, this is a bit of a generalization, but over the last 5 to 10 years, where there's been most advanced development in technology in the creative sector has been on screen. It's about bringing real depth to what has historically been, is a 2D experience. Now you can create that depth. We're interested in, we're talking about how can we actually, if you like, virtualize some of the physical experience. So what is it going to mean for theatre? How are theatre performances or in stadium experiences, if you're a band touring, what are they going to look like? What are they going to, what's that audience interaction going to be? How can the production processes, methods change or be made more efficient or be innovative? How can you innovate around those to create completely radically new experiences? So one of the things I always like to think is that a critical sign of success will be that we help produce, or through the lab, as it were, by bringing together the partners that we do, that somewhere in East London, with engagement and support of international partners and so on, but somewhere in East London, there'll be the next most fantastic and most compelling, world-leading creative experience that's on a par with the ABBA Voyage or something like that that will have been created in and around the park. I think that will be our sort of go-to to kind of impacts that we'd like to point to and say that we've broken that new ground that then might be replicated or mimicked around the world in different ways.
I think one of the things that I see at the moment coming out is a lot of interest in what is you guys are doing, what UCL is doing. With your colleague on the other side of the university in UCL, Christina, and what you've already done, the bus game app that we've been working on and thinking of how we're going to fund it to get it up to the next level of MVP. So I think there's already an opportunity not on the global stage. I mean, that's hyper-local. We're going to how we tell a story and help the wider Olympic Park with the Innovation District that's now being launched under the auspices of the new CEO at LDC, and our role in trying to make things work together and guide people and experiment and try something new. Something we've been hearing a lot about this week in Austin, and it has been a recurring theme over the last few years of being here, is the creative sector's importance in being able to tell stories.
Yeah.
And storytelling, as a CEO of a business, as a leading academic in a university, the ability to bring something to life, tell a story in a very powerful, engaging way that people then want to come on that journey with you to find out what happens in the story, takes new forms. There's many new forms, particularly in the age of AI and being able to distinguish between truth and reality. How do you think CEL is going to play its role in storytelling and being able to get our message across in the future?
That's a good question. I mean, I think the main thing there is that technology is only successful if there is the content, if there is the story. Tech on its own is not going to do that. And one of the things we've been doing by talking to colleagues at South by, for example, is say, actually, you've got some really interesting tech, but actually you might want to connect it to or bring creatives in a space with you to experiment how you might use it. Storytelling is really important. We've got in fact, the UNESCO chair for storytelling is based at Loughborough University, so we're working with him. We've got our design school we're working with, which have got a strong digital storytelling team as well. So we're bringing those in as academic partners. But some of the best storytellers are going to be the creatives we work with. So Wayne McGregor, great storyteller, Sadler as well,
amazing,
that are hosting and as a venue for fantastic stories. So I think for us, I suppose that it will work because the creative storytellers want to connect with tech companies and others, and they'll want to connect with business people and investors too, but to start experimenting and trying to design those new stories and new experiences.
So we're kind of getting close to the end of this session of Visionary. If I was to sort of hold you to account in a number of years' time, CEL's up and running, so what is the one thing? It's a question I'm always asked about. What's the one thing you want to do with Here East? So what is the one thing that if you're able to deliver through CEL, you'll be able to say, it's worth it? That's exactly what this is all about. What do you think that would look like?
Well, I think at one level, speaking pretty commercially about it, I'd say we want one unicorn. In a sense, we're not an incubator, we're not an investor, but the idea that we might create a space that is hosting and providing the sort of incubation or support that's associated with incubation. And by the way, that won't just be CEL. That's the point. It's the partnerships around CEL and the other things that we can give them access to. That it'd be great that if coming out of that, when I say unicorn, not so much the business, although that would be great too, but actually it will be the ABBA Voyage equivalent. It will be the new. We're not going to have a Las Vegas sphere on the park, or unlikely to have a Las Vegas sphere on the park. But what is that? What is that in London? I think there's every chance that in London, there will be a massive, really important go-to facility that people point to as being world leading. It might be a football stadium where the sports experience is transformational and people come from the world over to see that. It might be the Victoria and Albert Museum that have brought there, and as you mentioned some of the pilot projects we've been running. As we've got a couple of pilot projects running with the V&A at the moment. So it might be the V&A museum where actually it has the most inspirational space inside the museum, outside the museum, online, and all of which would have been hatched out of sell. That's what I think. What we want is to have not just one, but 3 or 4 examples like that people say world-leading innovations that have come out of that space that started out as an idea between Loughborough University, University College London, Here East, and the other partners to make something really exciting.
I think that
happen.
kind of shows the shared value of what we have at Here East, which has been delightful to see, not just with the universities, but lots of the other customers that we have on campus, which is actually about looking to the future. What can we create? How can we strengthen our business model? But ultimately, this leads to jobs, it leads to opportunity, it leads to more of an inclusive innovation ecosystem based on the Olympic Park. All the things that people talk about and love to talk about, but actually we're able to point to things, not just to Here East, but across the wider park and the wider partners that we've got around us, and say, but this is it in action. This is what it looks like.
The other thing that's worth adding, I think, is that I remember it was talking about the Olympic legacy. Some of the original vision for the legacy, of course, was to say that this is not regeneration of East London. This is not sort of making East London a little bit better than it was before. This is about having an ambition for East London that says let's have world-leading institutions there. Let's have world-leading athletes coming out of here. Let's have world-leading universities in East London. We've got most of those already. Wouldn't it be great to be able to say some of the most the world's leading innovations, technology innovations, and creative technology innovations from the second or third decade of the 21st century came out of or as a result of the legacy of the games? That would be a fantastic legacy for Here East and for Sadler.
And I think that is the key thing, which is East London really was a hotbed of creativity, always has been a home for invention, but since London 2012 has had a really big spotlight shone on it. It's benefited from a lot of infrastructure and a lot of investment coming into the area. But I think you're right, they've now got, as you say, the talent, the education, the academic research, and the type of businesses. If anybody said we'd have global businesses base themselves at Here East, sat alongside startups, plus the universities, all working together in collaboration, that's kind of the vision we wrote back in 2011, 2012. Yeah. And here we are in 2026, it's actually playing out. So it's been wonderful. And exactly, Cell is exactly the type of collaboration we envisaged when we wrote that vision. Of course, we're going to continue this conversation later. We've got Justin Diner, the CEO and co-founder of Synapse Virtual Production, joining us from LA. I know he's here in Austin now, arrived yesterday. Yeah. So thank you this afternoon for joining us. And thanks to everybody for joining Visionary, the Here East podcast, for this episode. We're live from Austin, Texas, at South by Southwest. I hope you have a great day. Thank you.